Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his massive warship and watched the stars. His ship was called the Sovereign's Wrath, and it was the biggest and strongest ship in the Zephyrian Imperial fleet. Behind him, 200 other warships floated in the darkness of space. Each one was filled with weapons that could destroy entire cities. The Admiral looked at the small yellow star ahead of them. Around that star was a planet called Earth. His people had been watching this planet for many months. The creatures that lived there called themselves humans. They seemed weak and stupid. "Admiral," said Commander Vex, walking up to him, "we have reached the edge of their star system. The planet is just as our scouts reported." Kethvar nodded slowly. He had conquered 47 worlds in his long career. Each time it was the same story. His fleet would arrive, show their power, and the local creatures would surrender. Then his people would take their resources and move on to the next world. "Show me the reports again," he said. A large screen appeared in front of them. It showed pictures of Earth taken by their spy ships. The Admiral saw a blue and green world with white clouds. It looked beautiful, but that did not matter. What mattered was that the humans were weak. "Look at their technology," Commander Vex said, pointing at the screen. "They still use chemical rockets to reach space. Their weapons are primitive nuclear bombs. They cannot even travel to other star systems." Kethvar smiled. This would be easy. The humans had not even built a proper space fleet. Their biggest weapons were stuck on the ground. They had no shields, no energy weapons, no faster-than-light travel. It would be like a giant stepping on ants. "What about their military?" the Admiral asked. "They are divided into many small groups," Vex replied. "They call them countries. These countries fight each other all the time. They have no single leader, no united defense force. When we attack, they will probably fight among themselves instead of fighting us." The Admiral laughed. "Perfect. The weaker they are, the faster we can finish this job and move on." But what Admiral Kethvar did not know was that human eyes were watching his fleet right now. Deep in space, hidden monitoring stations tracked every ship. On Earth, in secret bunkers buried deep underground, military leaders stared at computer screens showing the alien fleet. General Sarah Chen sat in one of these bunkers. She was 50 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. But those eyes were sharp and intelligent. She had been preparing for this moment for 20 years. "Ma'am," said a young officer, "the alien fleet has stopped at the edge of our solar system. They're holding position." "Good," General Chen said quietly. "How many ships?" 200 exactly as predicted. Their formation matches our intelligence reports." Chen nodded. The humans had been watching the Zephyrian Empire for a very long time. They knew how these aliens operated. First, they would demand surrender. Then they would make threats. Finally, they would attack. But the aliens had made one big mistake. They thought humans were weak and primitive. They thought Earth had no defenses. They were wrong. "Send the message to all stations," Chen ordered. "Operation Garden Party is now active." Across the Earth, things began to change. In the deep ocean, massive structures started to rise from the seafloor. On the moon, what looked like old mining equipment began to transform into something else. On Mars, abandoned colonies suddenly came to life with activity. The aliens watching Earth saw none of this. Their sensors were good, but not good enough to see through human technology. Admiral Kethvar looked at his tactical display. It showed Earth as a helpless world with no space defenses, just a few satellites and one small space station. The humans had built nothing that could threaten his fleet. "Begin the standard approach," he ordered. "Send the surrender demand." A communications officer activated the transmitter. The message went out in several human languages. The translation was not perfect, but it was clear enough. "People of Earth," the message said, "you are now facing the Imperial fleet of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been chosen for integration into our empire. You will surrender immediately and prepare for occupation. Resistance is futile. You have 1 hour to respond." The Admiral settled back in his command chair and waited. Usually the local creatures would panic when they received this message. Sometimes they tried to negotiate. Sometimes they begged for mercy. It did not matter. The result was always the same. 1 hour later, a response came from Earth. It came from the small space station orbiting the planet. The voice was calm and female. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen speaking for Earth. We have received your message. After careful consideration, we must decline your offer. We suggest you leave our solar system immediately and peacefully." Admiral Kethvar blinked in surprise. Then he began to laugh. Commander Vex and the other officers joined in. The idea that these primitive humans would refuse the Empire was absurd. "Did she just tell us to leave?" Vex asked, still chuckling. "I believe she did," the Admiral replied. "How amusing. They actually think they can resist us." But something bothered him about the human's voice. She had sounded too calm, too confident. Most creatures showed fear when facing his fleet. This human had sounded like she was discussing the weather. "Sir," the communications officer said, "they are sending another message." "Put it through," Kethvar ordered. The same calm voice spoke again. "Admiral Kethvar, we know who you are. We know your fleet composition and your standard tactics. We are giving you this warning because we prefer peaceful solutions. You have 1 hour to begin leaving our system. After that, we will consider you a hostile force." Now the Admiral was truly surprised. How did they know his name? How did they know about his tactics? His fleet used the best stealth technology in the galaxy. No primitive world should be able to detect them until they wanted to be detected. "Run a full sensor sweep," he ordered. "Check for any hidden defenses or weapons." The sensor operators worked for several minutes. Finally, they reported back. "Nothing, sir. We detect only what we saw before. A few satellites, one space station, some orbital debris. No weapons platforms, no hidden ships, no defense systems." Kethvar relaxed slightly. The humans were probably bluffing. Maybe they had intercepted some Imperial communications. That would explain how they knew his name. But they clearly had no real power to back up their threats. "Very well," he said. "It seems these humans need a demonstration of our power. They think their brave words will save them. Let us show them how wrong they are." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target one of their communication satellites. Use minimal force. We want to disable it, not destroy it completely. Let them see what our weapons can do." "Yes, sir," the weapons officer replied. "The cruiser Death's Edge is in position. They can take the shot. Do it." In the distance, one of the Imperial cruisers began to move toward a small Earth satellite. The satellite looked completely harmless. It was just a metal box with some antennas and solar panels, the kind of primitive technology you might expect from a species that barely knew how to leave their own planet. Admiral Kethvar watched the display and smiled. In a few minutes, the humans would see their satellite destroyed. Then they would understand that resistance was impossible. Then they would surrender like all the others. But Admiral Kethvar was about to learn that Earth was not like all the others. The humans were not weak. They were not primitive, and they had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The hunt was about to begin. But the Admiral did not yet know who was the hunter and who was the prey. The Imperial cruiser Death's Edge moved slowly toward the Earth satellite. Captain Zork stood on his bridge and prepared to fire. This was going to be easy. The satellite was not moving. It had no shields. It was just floating there like a piece of metal junk. "Target locked," his weapons officer reported. "Ready to fire on your command." "Fire," Captain Zork ordered. The cruiser's main weapon charged up with a bright blue light. This weapon could punch through the armor of enemy warships. It would turn the little satellite into dust and gas. The humans would see their technology destroyed and know they had no hope. But something strange happened. Just before the weapon fired, the satellite began to change. What had looked like a simple metal box started to unfold. Pieces moved and shifted like a flower opening its petals. In the center, something began to glow with a soft white light. It looked almost like a crystal or a gem. "What the hell?" Captain Zork muttered. The weapon fired. A beam of pure energy shot across space toward the satellite. But when the beam hit the glowing crystal, something impossible happened. The beam stopped. Not bounced off, not absorbed. It simply stopped in midair and hung there like a frozen lightning bolt. Then the crystal pulsed once with brilliant light. Captain Zork felt a strange sensation, like the universe had hiccuped. For just a moment, everything seemed to pause. Then his ship was gone, not destroyed, not blown apart, not vaporized, gone. Where the Death's Edge had been floating, there was now nothing but empty space. Even the background stars looked strange, as if reality was not sure what should be there. On the bridge of the Sovereign's Wrath, Admiral Kethvar stared at his display in shock. One moment he had been watching his cruiser prepare to destroy a primitive satellite. The next moment the cruiser had simply vanished. "What happened?" he demanded. "Where is the Death's Edge?" His sensor officer was frantically checking his equipment. "Sir,
I don't understand the readings.
The ship just stopped existing. There's no wreckage, no energy signature, no trace of it at all. That's impossible, Commander Vex said. Ships don't just disappear. Run a full diagnostic on all sensors, the Admiral ordered. Check for equipment malfunction. While his crew worked, Kethavar stared at the space where his ship had been. 300 crew members, gone, not dead, because that would leave bodies and wreckage just gone. The human voice came over the communications again. Dr. Sarah Chen sounded exactly as calm as before. Admiral Kethavar, that was a warning shot. Your ship and crew are safe. They have been relocated to a holding area where they will be well treated. You now have 1 hour to begin leaving our system. Warning shot? The Admiral said in disbelief. You made our ship disappear and you call it a warning shot? Yes, Dr. Chen replied. If we had wanted to destroy your fleet, we would have done so already. We prefer not to kill unless we have no choice. Your people are alive and will be returned to you when you leave our space. Admiral Kethavar felt something he had not felt in many years. Fear. Real, cold fear. In 47 conquered worlds, he had never seen technology like this. Ships that could make other ships simply stop existing. Weapons that could transport entire crews somewhere else without harming them. Sir, his science officer said quietly, I've been analyzing the sensor data from the satellite. The energy readings are impossible. Explain. The satellite somehow converted matter directly into energy with 100% efficiency. That should be theoretically impossible with any known technology, and then it used that energy to manipulate space-time itself. Kethavar felt his blood turn cold. Matter-to-energy conversion was the holy grail of physics. His people's best scientists said it would take thousands of years to develop. And the humans were doing it with a simple satellite. Furthermore, the science officer continued, the energy required to transport the Death's Edge would normally need a power source the size of a small moon. But they did it with a device no bigger than a shuttle. The Admiral's mind raced. If the humans had this kind of technology, why had they hidden it? Why did they appear so primitive? Why were they using chemical rockets when they could obviously do much more? The answer came to him slowly, and it made his fear even worse. They were hiding their true capabilities on purpose. But why, sir? Commander Vex said. What are your orders? Do we retreat? Kethavar almost said yes. Every instinct told him to run. But he was an admiral of the Imperial fleet. He had his orders from high command. The Empire did not retreat from primitive worlds, no matter what strange weapons they might have. Send a message to Imperial Command, he ordered. Tell them we have encountered unexpected resistance. Request instructions. While they waited for a reply, the Admiral studied the display showing Earth. The planet looked so peaceful and harmless. White clouds drifted over blue oceans. He could see the lights of cities on the dark side of the world. It looked like any other inhabited planet, but now he knew better. Somewhere down there, humans were operating technology that his people could barely understand. Technology that could make warships disappear with a thought. The reply from Imperial Command came quickly. High Command did not believe his report about the missing cruiser. They suggested equipment malfunction or some kind of illusion. The orders were clear. Proceed with the invasion as planned. Admiral Kethavar read the message twice. High Command lived far from the front lines. They had never seen what he had just seen. They thought he was making excuses or exaggerating. Sir? Commander Vex asked. What are our orders? Kethavar looked around his bridge. His officers were all watching him, waiting for his decision. Some looked afraid. Others looked confused. All of them trusted him to lead them safely, but his orders were clear. The Empire did not negotiate with primitives. The Empire did not retreat. The Empire conquered. All ships, he announced over the fleet communication system, prepare for full assault. Target the planet Earth. We will proceed with the original invasion plan. Even as he gave the order, part of his mind was screaming that this was a mistake. The humans had destroyed one of his ships without even trying. What would they do when he attacked them directly? But Admiral Kethavar was a soldier. He followed orders, even when those orders might lead him and his entire fleet to destruction. On Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen sat in her command center and watched the alien fleet begin to move. She had hoped they would be smart enough to leave. Some species were. When they saw what human technology could really do, they chose to retreat and find easier targets. But not these aliens. They were going to attack anyway. "Ma'am," her aide said, "the Imperial fleet is forming attack formation. They're moving toward Earth." Dr. Chen sighed. She was tired. Tired of hiding. Tired of pretending to be weak. Tired of watching other species make the same mistakes over and over again. "Very well," she said. "Send the activation codes to all defensive platforms. Authorization. Garden Party Final." Around the Earth, in space that had appeared empty, millions of tiny objects suddenly came to life. Each one was smaller than a grain of sand, but together they formed a network that could defend the entire planet. The aliens thought they were attacking a defenseless world. They were about to learn the truth. Earth was not defenseless. Earth was the most heavily defended planet in the galaxy, and the humans were about to show these invaders what happened when someone threatened their home. Admiral Kethvar stood in his command center and tried to understand what he was seeing. His science teams had been working for hours, studying the sensor data from the destroyed cruiser. The results made no sense. "Report," he ordered. Chief Science Officer Drack looked up from his instruments. His face was pale and confused. "Admiral, we have analyzed the energy readings from the satellite attack. The technology we observed should not exist." "Explain in simple terms," Kethvar said. "The humans somehow converted matter directly into energy with perfect efficiency. No waste, no heat, no radiation. This process requires understanding of physics that we have never seen before." The Admiral frowned. "Our own scientists have studied matter conversion for centuries. They say it is impossible with current technology." "That's correct, sir. But the humans did it anyway. And then they used that energy to manipulate space and time itself. They moved our entire ship to another location without destroying it. This requires power levels we can barely imagine." Kethvar felt a cold sensation in his stomach. How much power? To transport something the size of the Death's Edge would normally require a power source the size of a small star. But they did it with a device that fits inside a satellite. Either our understanding of physics is completely wrong, or the humans have technology thousands of years ahead of ours. The Admiral turned away from the science station and walked to the main display. It showed Earth floating peacefully in space, the same blue and green world they had been watching for months. Nothing had changed, but everything was different now. "Sir," Commander Vex said quietly, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach. If the humans have this kind of technology—" "No," Kethvar said firmly. "We have our orders. High Command expects us to complete this mission." But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at his mind. What if they were making a terrible mistake? What if the humans were much more dangerous than they appeared? On Earth, things were happening that the Imperial fleet could not see. Deep beneath the ocean, massive structures rose from the seafloor. They had been hiding there for decades, waiting for this moment. Each structure was the size of a city and contained weapons that could tear apart entire fleets. On the moon, what looked like abandoned mining equipment began to transform. Solar panels folded back to reveal weapon systems. Mining drills retracted to expose missile launchers. Communication towers extended into space, ready to coordinate the planet's defense. On Mars, the colonies that Imperial scouts had dismissed as failed settlements suddenly came alive with activity. Ships that had been hidden underground launched into space. Factories that had appeared dead began producing weapons and ammunition. All across the solar system, humanity's true defenses were awakening. General Sarah Chen watched it all from her command bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Around her, dozens of officers monitored screens showing defensive preparations across the entire solar system. "Status report," she ordered. "Ocean platforms are at full readiness," reported Colonel Martinez. "All lunar installations are active. Mars colonies are launching support ships as planned." "What about the nanoswarms? Fully deployed and invisible to enemy sensors. 30 million defensive units now surround Earth. Each unit is equipped with matter disruptors and molecular assemblers." Chen nodded. The nanoswarms were humanity's ultimate defense. Tiny robots, each smaller than a virus that could take apart enemy ships atom by atom. The alien sensors would never detect them. They would appear to be empty space right up until the moment they struck. "Ma'am," another officer said, "we're receiving communications from the Imperial fleet. They're demanding we surrender immediately or face total destruction." Chen almost smiled. The aliens still thought they were in control. They still believed Earth was helpless. "Open a channel," she ordered. Admiral Kethvar's image appeared on her screen. He looked confident and angry, like a man used to being obeyed. "Dr. Chen," he said, "I am giving you one final chance to surrender. Our patience is at an end. Surrender now or we will destroy your world." "Admiral," Chen replied calmly, "I appreciate your position, but I must ask you again to leave our system. You are not prepared for what will happen if you attack us." "Not prepared?" Kethvar laughed. "We have conquered 47 worlds. We have the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. What could your primitive planet possibly do to threaten us?" Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Admiral, may I ask you something? In all your conquests, have you ever wondered why some species seem to develop faster than others? What does that matter?" "It matters because not all species show their true capabilities to strangers. Some of us have learned that it's safer to appear weak than to appear strong." Kethvar frowned. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that everything you think you know about Earth is wrong. Your scouts saw what we wanted them to see. Your intelligence reports describe the civilization we pretended to be. The chemical rockets, the primitive weapons, the divided nations, all of it was theater." The Admiral felt that cold fear returning. "That's impossible. Our sensors are the best in the galaxy." "Your sensors are very good," Chen agreed, "but they can only detect what we allow them to detect. For the past 50 years, we have been watching your empire expand across the galaxy. We studied your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. We prepared for the day you would come to Earth." "You're bluffing," Kethvar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I? Tell me, Admiral. When your cruiser was destroyed, did your sensors detect any weapons fire from our satellite? Any energy buildup? Any sign that we were about to attack?" Kethvar was quiet. The answer was no. His sensors had detected nothing until the moment his ship vanished. Chen continued, "We have been spacefaring for much longer than you realize. While your empire was conquering primitive worlds, we were developing technology you cannot imagine. We could have conquered the galaxy ourselves, but we chose a different path." "What path?" "We chose to remain hidden. We chose to study rather than conquer. We chose to prepare rather than attack. And now when you threaten our home, you will see the results of that choice." Admiral Kethvar stared at the human woman on his screen. She looked so ordinary, so unremarkable, but her words sent chills down his spine. "If you're so advanced," he said, "why hide? Why not claim your place as rulers of the galaxy?" Chen smiled sadly. "Because ruling the galaxy was never our goal, Admiral. We learned long ago that the greatest predators are not the ones who roar the loudest. They are the ones who remain silent until it's time to strike." The communication ended, leaving Kethvar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers waited for orders. But for the first time in his career, the Admiral was not sure what those orders should be. Everything he thought he knew about this mission was wrong. The humans were not primitive. They were not defenseless. They had been watching his empire and preparing for this moment, but it was too late to change course now. His fleet was already moving toward Earth. High Command expected a quick victory, and Imperial pride would not allow him to retreat from a single planet, no matter how advanced their technology might be. "All ships," he announced, "maintain attack formation. Prepare to engage Earth defenses." As his fleet moved forward, Admiral Kethvar could not shake the feeling that he was leading his ships and crews to their deaths. But he was a soldier of the Empire, and soldiers followed orders, even when those orders were clearly a mistake. Behind him, his science officer continued studying the readings from the destroyed cruiser. What he found made him even more afraid, but he said nothing. Some knowledge was too terrible to share. Admiral Kethvar gave the final order with a heavy heart. "All ships begin attack run. Target Earth military installations and population centers." 200 Imperial warships moved forward in perfect formation. Each ship bristled with weapons that could level mountains. Their shields glowed with energy that could stop nuclear weapons. Their crews were trained warriors who had conquered nearly 50 worlds. But as they approached Earth, the space around them began to change. At first, it was subtle. Tiny sparkles of light like distant stars twinkling. Then more lights appeared, and more, until the space around Earth looked like it was filled with glittering dust. "Sir," the sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting some kind of particles in space. Millions of them. They're too small to identify clearly." Admiral Kethvar squinted at his display. "Are they dangerous?" "Unknown, sir. They're smaller than our sensors can properly track. They might just be space dust or debris." The Admiral nodded. Space was full of tiny particles. His shields would protect his ships from anything that small. He was wrong. The particles were not dust. They were nanobots, microscopic machines, each one smaller than a virus but more intelligent than the computers on his ship. 30 million of them surrounded the Imperial fleet, moving through space like an invisible cloud of death. On Earth, General Chen watched the alien fleet approach. Around her, her officers monitored the defensive systems. Nanoswarms are in position, reported Colonel Martinez. All fleets are ready. Ocean platforms are charged and targeting. How long until the Imperial ships reach attack range? Chen asked. 15 seconds, Chen took a deep breath. She had hoped it would not come to this. But the aliens had made their choice. Execute Operation Garden Party, she ordered. Full engagement. In space, the Imperial fleet continued its approach. Admiral Kethvar watched Earth grow larger on his screen. Soon, his weapons would be in range. Soon, this strange planet would surrender like all the others. 10 seconds to weapons range, 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1, open fire, Kethvar commanded. Every ship in his fleet unleashed its weapons at the same moment. Beams of energy and streams of missiles shot toward Earth like deadly rain. But Earth was not there anymore. Instead of a planet, Admiral Kethvar saw empty space. For a moment he thought Earth had been destroyed. Then he realized the truth. It was an illusion. A hologram so perfect that his sensors could not tell the difference. What the hell? Commander Vex shouted. Where did the planet go? Before anyone could answer, the real attack began. The nanobots that had been floating harmlessly in space suddenly came alive. Each tiny machine locked onto a target and began its work. They passed through the Imperial shields like the shields were not there. They swarmed over the hull of each ship and began taking it apart, not with explosions or energy weapons. They simply disassembled each ship atom by atom. Admiral Kethvar watched in horror as the hull of his flagship began to disappear. It did not melt or burn. It simply turned into empty space as if the metal was being erased from reality. Shields are useless, his weapons officer reported. These things are passing right through them. Return fire. Target anything that moves. But there was nothing to target. The nanobots were too small to see, too small to track, too small to shoot. They were everywhere and nowhere, taking apart the fleet piece by piece. The cruiser Thunder's Wrath was the first to go. Its crew watched helplessly as their ship dissolved around them. But instead of dying in the vacuum of space, they found themselves transported to small escape pods that appeared out of nowhere. The destroyer Starkiller tried to escape, but its engines vanished before it could move. The crew found themselves floating in comfortable rescue ships, watching their vessel turn to dust. Ship after ship disappeared, but the crews were saved. Every time a ship was destroyed, its people were safely moved to small human vessels that seemed to appear from empty space. Admiral Kethvar realized what was happening. The humans were not just destroying his fleet. They were capturing it, taking it apart like children taking apart toys but making sure no one was hurt. Sir, his communications officer called out. The humans are sending us a message. Dr. Chen's voice filled the bridge. Imperial fleet, you are surrounded and outgunned. We are disabling your ships but preserving your lives. Do not attempt to resist. Your weapons cannot harm us, but we prefer not to harm you. Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers stared at their instruments in shock. Nothing they tried worked. Their weapons fired uselessly into empty space. Their shields protected them from nothing. Their ships dissolved beneath their feet while they watched. How? He whispered. How is this possible? As if she had heard him, Dr. Chen's voice answered. You are facing technology that is several thousand years ahead of yours, Admiral. We have mastered matter at the molecular level. We can manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. Your ships are made of atoms, and we control atoms. The Admiral felt his knees go weak. Thousands of years ahead. His empire had the most advanced technology in the known galaxy. How could these humans be so far beyond them? Furthermore, Chen continued, what you think of as empty space around Earth is actually filled with our defensive systems. You have been surrounded since the moment you entered our solar system. Kethvar looked at his tactical display. It showed empty space in all directions, but now he knew better. The emptiness was an illusion. The humans had hidden their true defenses so well that his sensors could not detect them. Around him, his bridge began to disappear. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, all of it turned to dust and vanished. But he did not fall or suffocate. Instead, he found himself standing in a small, comfortable chamber with breathable air and normal gravity. Through a window, he could see his flagship, what was left of it. The mighty Sovereign's Wrath looked like a skeleton made of light. Only the basic framework remained, glowing softly in the darkness of space. "Welcome aboard the Earth vessel Mercy," Dr. Chen's voice said. "You and your crew are our guests now." Admiral Kethvar looked around the chamber. It was clean and bright, with comfortable furniture and air that smelled like flowers. Through other windows, he could see his officers in similar chambers. They all looked confused but unharmed. "The battle is over," Chen announced. "Total time, 32 seconds. Your fleet has been completely disabled, but all crew members are safe and well. You will be returned to your people when you leave our space." 32 seconds. An entire Imperial fleet destroyed in 32 seconds. Kethvar had conquered worlds that took longer to surrender. "I don't understand," he said aloud. "If you have this kind of power, why hide it? Why not rule the galaxy?" A door opened in his chamber and Dr. Chen walked in. She was smaller than he had expected and older, with kind eyes and gray hair. She looked like someone's grandmother, not the commander of the most powerful military force he had ever seen. "Because," she said gently, "power without wisdom is dangerous. Your empire conquers and destroys. We prefer to create and protect." She sat down across from him, as if they were having tea instead of meeting after a battle. "You see, Admiral, we have been watching your empire for a long time. We know what happens to species that become too aggressive. They destroy themselves or they force others to destroy them. We chose a different path." Kethvar stared at her. "What path?" "The path of the gardener," Chen said. "We tend and nurture rather than conquer and destroy. We help other species grow rather than subjugating them. And when predators like your empire threaten the garden, we remove them." The Admiral felt something break inside him. Everything he had believed about strength and power was wrong. His mighty empire was nothing compared to these quiet gardeners who hid among the stars. "What happens now?" he asked. Dr. Chen smiled. "Now you have a choice. You can return to your empire with this knowledge, or you can stay and learn a better way." Outside the window, Admiral Kethvar could see human ships appearing throughout space. Not warships, but vessels of strange and beautiful design. They moved like living things, graceful and purposeful. The age of conquest was over. The age of gardeners had begun. Admiral Kethvar sat in his comfortable cell and tried to understand what had happened to his life. The chamber aboard the human ship was better than his quarters on the Sovereign's Wrath. The air was clean and fresh. The food was delicious. The bed was soft. But he was still a prisoner. 3 days had passed since the 32nd War, as he had begun to think of it. 3 days since his mighty fleet had been destroyed by invisible weapons. 3 days since everything he believed about power and strength had been proven wrong. The door to his chamber opened and Dr. Chen entered with a tray of food. She had visited him every day, bringing meals and conversation. She never acted like his captor. She acted like a concerned host. "Good morning, Admiral," she said, setting the tray on his table. "I brought you some Earth coffee. I thought you might enjoy trying it." Kethvar looked at the dark liquid in the cup. It smelled rich and bitter. "Why do you do this?" he asked. "Do what?" "Treat me kindly. I came here to conquer your world. I would have killed millions of your people if I could. Why don't you hate me?" Dr. Chen sat down across from him, just as she had every day. "Because hatred is a waste of energy," she said simply. "You were doing what you thought was right. Your empire taught you that might makes right, that the strong should rule the weak. How could you know any different?" The Admiral shook his head. "But I would have destroyed your civilization. Yes, you would have tried. But we never let you get close enough to succeed. And now you have a chance to learn something new." Kethvar sipped the coffee. It was bitter but warming. "What do you want me to learn?" "That there is more than one way to be strong," Chen replied. "Your empire believes that strength comes from the ability to destroy. We believe that true strength comes from the ability to create and protect." She gestured toward the window. Outside, Kethvar could see human ships moving through space. They did not look like warships. They were graceful and organic, like living creatures swimming through the stars. "Tell me about your technology," he said. "How did you develop such advanced weapons?" Chen smiled. "That's the interesting part. We didn't develop them as weapons. Everything you saw, the nanobots, the matter manipulation, the space-time distortion, all of it was created for peaceful purposes. peaceful purposes. The nanobots were designed to clean pollution from our oceans and atmosphere. The matter conversion technology was developed to turn waste into useful materials. The space-time manipulation was created to help us explore distant stars without using enormous amounts of energy. Kethvar stared at her. You're saying your most powerful weapons are just tools? Everything is a tool, Chen said. A hammer can build a house or break a skull. Fire can cook food or burn down a forest. The difference is in how you choose to use it. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. How long have your people had this technology? About 70 years for the basic principles. We achieved full mastery about 30 years ago. 30 years? Kethvar felt his blood run cold. You've had this power for 30 years and never used it? Oh, we used it constantly. We cleaned our world's environment. We built cities that float in the sky and underwater. We created gardens on dead worlds. We explored distant galaxies. We just never used it to conquer anyone. The Admiral put his head in his hands. 30 years. His empire could have been stopped 3 decades ago, before they conquered dozens of worlds, before they enslaved millions of beings, before they became the terror of the galaxy. Why didn't you stop us sooner? He asked. Chen's expression grew sad. Because we hoped you would stop yourselves. We kept thinking that eventually your people would realize that conquest leads only to more conquest, that violence breeds more violence. We waited for you to choose a better path, but we never did. No. And when you came to Earth, we knew the waiting was over. Some predators cannot be reasoned with. They must be stopped. Kethvar looked up at her. What happens to my crew? To my people? That depends on them, Chen said. And on you. She stood up and walked to the window. Your crew members are in similar chambers throughout our fleet. Every day we offer them the same choice we're offering you. They can return to the Empire with a warning, or they can stay and learn. Learn what? How to build instead of destroy. How to heal instead of harm. How to grow instead of conquer. The Admiral joined her at the window. And if they choose to return? Then we will give them a ship and safe passage home, along with a message for your Emperor. What message? Chen turned to face him. That the age of empires is over. That humanity is now protecting the galaxy's younger species. That any attempt to continue the old ways of conquest will be met with overwhelming force. Kethvar felt a chill run down his spine. You're going to fight the entire empire? We're going to end the empire, Chen said calmly. Not by destroying it, but by transforming it. Our ships are already appearing throughout Imperial space. Not as conquerors, but as teachers. She touched a control on the wall and the window became a display screen. It showed images from across the galaxy. Human ships hovering peacefully over Imperial worlds. Humans sharing technology and knowledge. Humans helping to heal planets damaged by war. We're offering the same choice to every world in your empire, Chen explained. Join us in building a better galaxy or continue the path of destruction alone. And if they choose destruction? Then they will find themselves fighting the combined forces of every species they ever tried to conquer. We're not the only ones who were hiding our true capabilities, Admiral. Many species chose to appear weak rather than become targets. Kethvar stared at the images. Everywhere he looked, he saw the same thing. Imperial worlds welcoming human teachers. Former slaves rising up with advanced weapons. Conquered planets declaring their independence. The Empire is falling apart, he whispered. The Empire is transforming, Chen corrected, into something better. Something that builds instead of destroys. The Admiral turned away from the window. Everything he had ever known was changing. His empire, his career, his entire understanding of the universe. What about me? He asked. What am I supposed to do? Whatever you choose, Chen said. You can return home and try to convince your people to surrender peacefully. You can stay here and help us teach other Imperial officers. Or you can find a third option that we haven't thought of yet. Kethvar was quiet for a long time. Finally he asked, if I stay, what would I do? Help us understand your people. Help us find ways to transition Imperial worlds peacefully. Help us turn warriors into gardeners. Gardeners, the Admiral repeated. The word felt strange in his mouth. It's not as easy as it sounds, Chen said with a smile. Growing things requires patience, wisdom, and careful attention. Much harder than destroying them. That evening, Kethvar stood alone in his chamber and made his decision. Through the window, he could see Earth in the distance. The blue and green world that had destroyed his fleet and changed his life. Tomorrow, he would give Dr. Chen his answer. He would choose between returning to an empire that was already dying, or staying to help build something new. For the first time in his life, Admiral Kethvar understood what real strength looked like. It was not the power to destroy. It was the wisdom to know when not to use that power. The galaxy was changing. The age of conquest was ending. And perhaps, if he was very lucky, there might still be time for an old warrior to learn how to tend a garden. 3 months later, former Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of a human exploration vessel. He wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's Galactic Cooperation Initiative. Around him, humans and former Imperial officers worked together, planning the reconstruction of war-torn worlds. He had chosen to stay. So had most of his crew. They were learning to build instead of destroy, to heal instead of harm, to nurture instead of conquer. It was harder than warfare, but it was also more rewarding. Through the viewport, he could see a dead world that was slowly coming back to life. Human terraforming technology was giving it new oceans and atmosphere. Former Imperial engineers were building cities designed for peace rather than war. "It's beautiful," he said to Dr. Chen, who stood beside him. "Yes," she agreed. "That's what the galaxy can look like when we choose cooperation over conquest." Kethvar nodded. He was still learning this new way of thinking. But for the first time in decades, he looked forward to tomorrow. The age of gardeners had truly begun.